Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The stage is the late 1880s. The high plains of Colorado, near the small frontier settlement of Red Willow. The sun bleaches the grasses golden, wind kicks up loose dust, and the ranch houses stand sparse against the horizon. Maren Holt pulled her horse to a halt at the edge of the town proper. The leather reins bit into her palm. She had ridden 2 long days from Nebraska, through prairie and ragged corduroy roads after a rainstorm had turned things into mud. Her father's letter had arrived just 6 weeks before, shaky script and crumbling edges. "Come west, we need you." Now Maren looked at Red Willow, a handful of wooden buildings, a shuttered saloon, a water tower, the sign Holt & Sons Ranching Cummerger visible just beyond the main street. Her father's voice ghosted in her mind. "It'll be rough, but honest." She dismounted and tied the horse to a hitching post. Her boots sank into grit as she stepped down. She felt out of place. She'd grown up in town, dresses and books and social calls, but now she wore dust-smudged trousers and a wide-brimmed hat. She found the ranch house, whitewashed wood, porch sagging a bit, cattle lowing in the background. Her father, Callum Holt, paused on the porch, his gray hair thin, face weathered. He squinted at her. "Maren," he said. "Yes, Dad." She set down the small leather satchel she carried. He strode forward and pulled her into a quick hug. "You made it." She surveyed the scene. "You said you needed help?" He nodded. "We lost half the herd last winter, in Sundance Canyon, and the bank's breathing down our neck. I thought if you came out we could get things right." Maren drew in a breath of prairie air, tinged with manure and wild sage. "I'll try, Dad." He smiled, a little relieved. "That's all I ask." At dusk the plains glowed pink. Maren stood on the porch and watched the cattle, listened to the wind whispering through the long grasses. She thought, this is my life now. Uncertain, but mine. Next morning Maren walked the fence lines. She met ranch hands, Joe Red McCall, tall, wiry with a red beard, and Elise Barton, a young woman who drove the milk cows into town each morning. They nodded curtly. New help always meant adjustment. Maren joined Joe to check a section of fence that had sagged. Joe grunted. "Winter wife the posts, huh?" She smiled. "I'll learn." They worked through sunup to noon. The labor was honest and brutal. Barbed wire, wooden posts, patches of broken wire from stray cattle. Maren's shirt clung to her back with sweat. The wind dried it instantly. At midday a stranger rode into the yard, a tall figure on a bay horse, dark hat tipped low, saddlebag hanging. Maren glimpsed him from the barn door, his face partly shadow. He dismounted. The bay wheezed. He looked at the house, then approached. "Name's Anders Reed," he said, tipping his hat. Rough accent, his voice low. "Looking for work." Callum Holt eyed him. "We might have a job. Cattle drive coming in 2 weeks." Anders nodded. "I've done drives into New Mexico, Texas. I'm good in a storm on foot or horse." Maren watched the interaction. Something in Anders's stance and eyes made her uneasy. Quiet but alert, as if expecting trouble. Later, during lunch under the shade of the big oak, Maren asked him, "Where you from?" Anders cut a chunk of bread, chewed. "Minnesota originally. Then bad luck in work, so I figured I'd head west." She raised an eyebrow. "Bad luck how?" He looked away, then back. "Lost a partner on a drive. He got trampled." "I blame myself," her face softened. "You're here now." His voice held a faint tremor. "We all gotta live with ghosts." Maren nodded and something shifted, a recognition that everyone carried something invisible. That evening, Maren and Anders sat by the campfire outside the ranch house. The flames flickered yellow-orange, casting long shapes. Joe sat opposite, whittling a piece of wood. Elise had gone inside to fetch tea. Callum sat back, pipe in hand. Maren said quietly, "What kind of ghost do you carry?" Anders stared into the fire. "There was a boy on the drive. His mother sent him with me. I was supposed to protect him. I couldn't." She reached and laid her hand near his on the log. "You can help now." He looked at her, a slight hint of gratitude. The wind carried faint cattle lowing. As night deepened, the stars blazed overhead. Maren felt the vastness of the prairie, the fragility of life and the stir of something new, both in Anders and within herself. Days passed. Maren found her rhythm. Early morning rides, checking water troughs, supervising the milk cows, helping with branding. She and Anders grew comfortable in quiet ways. Shared chores, brief conversations, mutual respect. No overt romance yet, just a foundation. Then trouble arrived. A telegram. The bank in Denver was threatening to call in the loan unless half the herd was sold. Callum showed it to Maren and Anders. We can sell the calves or we foreclose. Anders rubbed his jaw. If we sell now, we weaken our hold. But if we keep and something goes wrong... Maren's heart sank. She had left her safe world for this. Did she step into a mess? That evening a stranger rode in. 2 men actually, boots dusty, faces stubbled, eyes cold. They asked for Callum Holt. You're behind on payments, one said. Bank sent us. Callum stood firm. I'll pay when I can. The man smirked. Your can't means nothing. We take when we're told. Maren felt a surge of anger, fear. She stepped beside her father. This is our land. You back off. The stubbled man looked at her. And who's the girl? Ranch hand? Maren squared her shoulders. Family. They left with a warning. Do the math, Holt. We'll be back. That night the fire felt smaller. The wind howled. Maren lay awake hearing the cattle low in the dark, imagining those 2 men returning with intent worse than talk. Anders sat outside cleaning his rifle. Maren joined him. You're no stranger to danger, she said. He nodded. Been along too many drives where the desert went hungry and men got reckless. These men, I don't like their look. She leaned closer. What if they come back at night? He didn't reply until later. Then we'll be ready. Maren realized for the first time that this frontier was not just wide open skies and sunsets. It was threat and choice, life and loss. She felt a fear but also a determination. She wasn't just daughter of a rancher now. She was part of it. A week later the cattle drive began. The herd stood in the corrals restless. Anders led the team with Joe and a half-dozen hands. Maren and Callum were responsible for the trailing stock, the calves. Maren saddled up early at dawn, horizon pink, the prairie stretching endlessly. She felt a surge of exhilaration, the first real venture beyond the ranch fences. Anders rode beside her for a moment. Keep your eyes ahead, he said, and trust your horse. She nodded and rode out. They faced long days, the ground dry, some water holes gone, the wind hotter. They moved slowly, cattle shifting, dust rising behind them like a beige wave. Between the cows, Anders taught Maren how to coax a lost calf, how to listen to the herd's murmurs. On the 3rd night, they camped under a sky wide with stars. Campfire sputtered. The men drank coffee. Maren and Anders found themselves side by the fire. Do you miss your old life? He asked her softly. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a faded photograph. Her brother as a boy standing in front of the family home. Sometimes I wonder if I left too much behind. He nodded. Leaving isn't always losing. Sometimes it's finding. They shared a quiet look. The fire crackled. The cattle lowed faintly in the darkness beyond. But dawn brought trouble. They opened the water trough to find it drained. Someone had diverted the stream upstream. Anders cursed low. Sabotage. Joe McCall rode ahead to scout. Anders pulled Maren aside. Stay close to the herd. If things go sideways, I want you where I can see you. Maren's heart hammered. She realized this was more than house ranch trouble. It was someone willing to fight. They pressed on, rationing water, the herd slower, weaker. As they climbed a ridge, the wind blew fiercely, and one steer slipped off a narrow ledge. Anders dismounted and helped guide it back. Maren watched his steady hands. She felt an ache of admiration. That night, as she lay in her bedroll, she thought, I'm in love. But with what? The man beside me? Or this dusty, dangerous path I climbed into? She didn't know yet. She only knew she wouldn't turn back. By the 5th day, the saboteurs' work grew bolder. One night, the camp was roused by gunshots. The herd stampeding. Anders leapt from his bunk, grabbed his rifle. Maren yanked her hat on, heart racing. They galloped into the dust fog. At the center, they found 2 masked men, mounted, trying to chase cattle toward a ravine. Anders fired a warning shot. The men spurred away. The herd circled back, shaken. Maren found herself back at the rifle, hands trembling. Anders shouted to her, Stay with the herd. Don't chase them. She nodded. She watched those wild eyes of the cattle, felt fear and resolve fuse. When the dust settled, Anders rode over to her. You okay? He asked. She exhaled hard. I thought I was going to lose everything. He dismounted and stood in front of her under the moonlight. You didn't, because you were brave. Her breath caught. She realized this moment. Not safe, not quiet, but real. Her heart thudded. I'm scared of losing you. He paused. I'm scared too. He reached and brushed dusty hair from her forehead. I like you, Maren Holt. Out here you've proven you're more than help. You're part of this. Tears threatened. She looked at him, the firelight ghosting in his eyes. I like you too, Anders Reed, more than I expected. They kissed, soft, the prairie wind whispering around them. The moment was fragile and honest. Then call of hoofbeats broke the embrace. Joe came galloping. More trouble down the canyon. They jumped up side by side. Anders whispered, We'll finish this together. Maren nodded fiercely. They rode into Sundance Canyon at dawn. The walls of rock rose sharp, shadows cold. Anders, Maren, Joe, and the men circled the herd. The saboteurs had driven some cattle toward the canyon rim again. The wind whistled. Suddenly gunshots echoed. 2 men emerged from behind rocks. They held rifles pointed at Anders and Joe. Maren's heart pounded. She squeezed her own rifle. Give up the herd, one shouted. Or we pick you off one by one. Anders shouted back, We're not cowards. We defend what's ours. Shots rang. Dust and hoofbeats thundered. Maren fired. A deliberate shot that knocked a rifle from one attacker's hand. The man fell. Joe galloped forward. The other attacker turned to run. Anders chased. Maren kept watch on the herd, guiding them away from the canyon rim toward safer ground. She felt adrenaline rip through her. She looked across and saw Anders tackling the attacker, wrestling him into the dust. The attacker spat curses. Anders pinned him down. The standoff ended when the rest of the attackers fled. Anders returned, face flushed. He turned to Maren and smiled, rough and proud. You did good. She climbed off her horse, knees shaking but standing. We did it together. Callum Holt came up, eyes proud. I'll be damned. They gathered the herd, secured the stock, and rode out of the canyon as the sun reached high. The crisis had passed, the threat neutralized. On the ride back, Maren nestled in the saddle behind Anders. He wrapped one arm around her waist. She leaned into him. The plain stretched ahead, free again. Back at Red Willow, the herd intact, the ranch saved, for now. The bank accepted the drive's success as payment for another season. Callum relaxed for the first time in months. He patted Maren on the shoulder. You brought more than help. You brought heart. Maren smiled, glancing at Anders, who was leaning against the barn watching cattle. Their eyes met. Without words, they acknowledged what had grown between them. That evening, they held a small celebration. Elise brought lemonade. Joe grilled venison. The ranch hands clapped Anders on the back. Anders stood and cleared his throat. This isn't just my drive or Joe's work, it's everyone's, and especially one person who rode in and changed things. He looked at Maren. Thank you. Maren flushed. She stepped forward. We all did it together. They watched sunset from the porch. Golden light, long shadows, wind rustling the tall grasses. Anders took her hand. You could stay here, he said softly. She looked at him, at the ranch, at the plains wide and waiting. I will stay, she said. If you'll have me. He squeezed her hand. Always. They leaned into each other. The wind carried promise. In the last light, Maren thought about how far she'd come. From town to prairie, from doubt to belonging, from fear to love. The ranch was theirs now, their life together. The horizon wide. The future uncertain, yes, but full of hope. And as stars blossomed overhead, she and Anders sat side by side, no hurry, no pretense. Just 2 hearts anchored in the dust and wind of the frontier, ready for whatever came.